I personally think if you resort to camping or tunneling for any strategy, you're a fucking shitty killer. Camping and tunneling are the dumbest fucking strategies in the game. If you resort to tunneling or camping, you're dog shit. If you tunnel somebody off of fucking hook as soon as they get unhooked and you follow them until their BT and their haste runs out, you're a shitty killer. There's really no skill with tunneling. It's just one of the worst fucking things you can do. Damn, bro. Like, I just really hate tunnelers that tunnel off a hook, and also that just tunnel period, that just result to doing that because they don't have skill.
Ah, yes, tunneling. One of the most controversial topics amongst the Dead by Daylight community. But what exactly is tunneling? It's a killer strategy where the killer repeatedly targets and chases one survivor throughout the whole game. More specifically, immediately after they are unhooked. They do this with the goal of eliminating the survivor from the match as quickly as possible. Now, why is this bad? Why is it toxic? Why do some survivors tell killers to off themselves simply because they chose to tunnel?
I just hope he dies. In a video game, in real life.
I want to know exactly why this is so frowned upon, and that's what I'm here to find out. So to get my answers, I decided to ask the highly intelligent individuals of TikTok to see why it's so bad or toxic, and see how they would explain it to someone who has no idea why this would be toxic, so I can get a better understanding of it myself. Make sure to follow my TikTok, by the way, at MakeOutRose. And this is what they had to say. This individual says, and I quote, "The main reason it's bad is because of two things. One, it completely removes the ability for one person in the game to play almost at all. If anything, I'd argue it gives a full ability for one person to play, because if you are the one getting tunneled, then this means the killer is ignoring everybody except you. So therefore, you have the entire map to work with, which means that you will have every filler, every TNL, every gym palette, every jungle gym, every ornament tile, every god palette, including shack, and I'm sure I don't need to name all the tiles in the game. You get the point. So it doesn't take away the ability for someone to play, it only enhances it. So I'd say this point is debunked. The only way it would completely remove the ability for someone to play is if they are bad and don't know how to run tiles or make it to the next one. And unfortunately, that is a skill issue, especially with all the resources I listed at your disposal. And I don't say that with hate, but it is a hard truth some players need to hear, so they hopefully feel the urge to improve. He then goes on to say, obviously there's a way to avoid tunneling, but it's just not fun most of the time. 2, it's just not even a good killer strategy. If the survivors have even a little bit of brain, you'll just lose if you tunnel, and it's boring for everyone. So here's a contradiction. Earlier, he said tunneling takes away the ability for someone to play, but now he's saying you can counter tunneling. If you can counter tunneling, then it doesn't take away the ability for someone to play, because in you actively countering tunneling,
Oh wait,
Every time
there's
he
no
hits a
downstairs, bro.
survivor, every single pallet blocks.
Oh, the hex?
Yes, blood favor.
Only Invis is better.
Thank you, the best killer,
Like
Tommy.
dog.
I'm working at the head. Where-
He hit me on hook.
Oh shit!
Damn. He's injured and on that hook. Let's heal him real quick. He's gonna be fast. Wait.
Yeah, where the gates at?
Oh, let me start opening.
Oh my
them, I
God.
guess.
Why is it not open?
I didn't even make it.
Let's go. Bag him, bag him, bag him, bag him, bag him, bag him.
that's you having the ability to play. And when he said it's not a good strategy and the killer will inevitably lose for tunneling, also contradicts his first statement. How can the killer lose if they are taking away the ability for one survivor to play? That doesn't add up. He then finishes off really strong by saying, and this really shows where his head is at and why he thinks the way he does. He says, so it's just considered BM because you're having less fun and losing. There's no upside. Some killers are designed to tunnel and camp, and I've never had an issue with that. It's just most of the time, it's lame. Wow, I mean, I'm just absolutely flabbergasted on how silly this statement is. I'm sure this is mostly the reason why some Survivor One Trick mains find tunneling as toxic, because of their own personal feelings. Also, by the way, if you don't know what BM, it's an abbreviation for bad manners. If something is considered BMing because you're having less fun and losing, then I guess my teacher in high school has been BMing me because she made me take the most unfun quiz ever and I failed it. I guess whenever you lose a game of chess and didn't have fun as a result of losing, your opponent just BM'd the fuck out of you. Even if he was nice, even if he was respectful and shook your hand afterwards, nope, that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, he still BM'd you because you didn't have fun and lost. Also, just to comment on his not fun and boring part of the statement, those are subjective terms, so they're not going to be strong words to use in trying to explain why tunneling is toxic. I can say it is fun and that it's not toxic, and all of a sudden I have an argument just as valid as his. Hopefully you can see why that argument is silly and it's only based around his feelings and no logic or reasoning as to why he thinks tunneling is toxic. So I'm still not sure why tunneling is toxic. Let's see if the next guy can help us out with that. This individual says, because it's unfun and not very interactive gameplay. If you get tunneled, you might as well not even move after getting unhooked. We already talked about the fun part, so I'll address the not very interactive gameplay point first. As a survivor, there are many things you can do in DBD. You can repair generators, you can cleanse or even bless totems, you can open chests, you can unhook and heal survivors, you can hide in lockers, and you can get chased by the killer. Which, let's be honest, out of all the things you can do in DBD as a survivor, getting chased by the killer has to be the most interactive gameplay. And if the killer is chasing you and you only, that's as interactive as it's going to get. So that point he made is heavily incorrect. If you getting tunneled out is equivalent to not moving at all, then we need to work on that looping and realize that it's a skill issue, because no chase should ever be similar to someone not moving at all, even if it's a tunnel out, because like I stated before, you have the entire map to work with. This guy didn't do a good job either, so let's move on to the next guy. This king says, it's not necessarily bad, but it's toxic, because imagine you're a survivor and you just get unhooked and the killer keeps following only you around, knocking you down again and continues to hook you instead of going for other people. It's just not fair to focus one person over the others. First of all, this guy just explained to me what tunneling is and said it was unfair. I get what tunneling is, but I want to know why and how. And he didn't give me a reason, so unfortunately, I still don't know why tunneling is toxic or bad. I get what tunneling is, but I want to know the why and the how, and he didn't give me either of those. So unfortunately, I still don't know why tunneling is toxic or bad. This individual says, tunneling is a strategy that I understand in competitive settings or near the end of the game. Okay, so this guy wouldn't think tunneling is toxic if it was done under a competitive setting. Now, what if I were to tell you DBD is and always is competitive? You don't think so? Well, I can prove you wrong. First, let's define what competitive is. Competitive means involving competition, where the people, teams, or groups are trying to win, be better than others, or achieve a higher ranking or outcome. Now, what is Dead by Daylight? Dead by Daylight is a 4 versus 1 multiplayer horror game where 4 survivors attempt to escape the match by completing all 5 generators against one killer whose job is to stop the survivors from completing the generators and escaping the match by sacrificing them all to the entity. Okay, great. Now we understand what competitive is and what Dead by Daylight is. But how do these two correlate? As per the definition of competitive, something is competitive when there are 2 or more sides trying to succeed or win. The survivors are trying to win by escaping, and the killer is trying to win by stopping the survivors from escaping. That's one qualification met for the definition of competitive. There is a goal or win condition that determines the winner amongst the opposing players. Win condition for the survivors is escaping. If they succeed, they win. Win condition for the killer is preventing the survivors from escaping, and if they succeed, they win. That's another qualification met for the definition of competitive. So yes, by definition, DBD is competitive. So there should be no circumstances whatsoever where tunneling should be considered toxic under this guy's views. Because if we go back to what tunneling is, it's when a killer targets one survivor to get them out of the match as quickly as possible. And getting survivors out of the match is a requirement from the killer's win condition. And tunneling is a valid strategy that breaks no rules and helps the killer meet his win condition. How the killer goes about meeting his win condition, unless he cheats, is irrelevant, as long as he meets his win condition. And if we start calling the opposing side's tactics toxic, then killers have every right for saying gen rushing is toxic, despite it being a requirement for the survivor's win condition. And killers would be just as valid as survivors calling tunneling toxic. Obviously, that's a bit silly, which is why we shouldn't do that on either sides. And if he still thinks it's toxic under his worldview, then he must also believe it's toxic for any NBA player trying to win by meeting their win condition. He also said he would understand it at the end of the game, but that claim is irrelevant now since he should think it's always okay under a competitive setting, which we just proved DBD to be. He then finishes off by saying, the issue is when people start the game out tunneling and knock it down to 3 survivors before a second gen gets done. That is what's unsportsmanlike. Again, no need to attack this point since his own claim about the competitive setting debunks his own words. Alright, well that's 3 comments made already and I still don't get why it's toxic. Am I really struggling to see why? Or are these people struggling to tell me why? Okay, so this guy actually said something I strongly agree with. He says, it's just sort of the culture that's developed. There's a belief that each role is responsible for creating a fun game for the other side, and playstyles that create unfun games for your opponent is considered toxic. The power role usually gets the worst end of this, since they have the most agency to dictate how the game plays out. Not all, just most. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's a really good way to sum up the points that have been made up so far. Moving on to the next guy. This individual starts off by saying, DBD was originally designed with the intention that killer followed mechanics, like down, then hook. It relied heavily on killers following this, which broke down over time. Yeah, I mean, tunneling does require a down, then hook, and you can't really tunnel without downing and hooking. Now tunneling is said to be many things, but it is truly when you go right back to hook, ignore the other serves there, like the serve who rescued hook, and go after the freshly unhooked serve till you down them again. Yeah, that's what tunneling is. It's just considered bad taste because you're keeping one person from doing anything else and getting them out early. This is very similar, if not the same point the first guy made about tunneling removing the ability for the survivor to play, and I kinda already debunked that. But I'll attack this from another angle. Let's grant this claim for 30 seconds for the sake of the argument. If it is bad taste because the killer is keeping the survivor from doing anything else by tunneling them out, and if downing and hooking is a killer mechanic as he stated in the beginning of his argument, and if we're logically consistent with our own views and points, it would also be bad taste if the survivors sabotage hooks because this now prevents the killer from hooking. And what did we learn? That hooking is a mechanic. And if the killer can't do mechanics, then the killer is kept from doing anything else. Therefore, logically speaking, under his argument, it's bad taste to sabotage hooks. If you think that sounds absolutely ridiculous, that's the logic of this individual, and I 100% agree with you. Moving on to the next guy. Here, he keeps it really short and sweet, and he says, it's really hard to play against, but that's about it. What's hard is subjective. I find it hard to play against ranged killers such as Huntress and the Deathslinger. Am I justified in calling people who play those killers toxic? No. So you shouldn't be justified in calling tunnelers toxic because you find it hard to play against. That one was pretty easy. Now I want to give you my opinion on tunneling, and I'll make it very, very simple. Dead by Daylight is a competitive game. The win condition for the killer is to sacrifice 3 or more survivors to the entity. If the killer fails and 3 or more survivors escape, then he loses. tunneling is a strategy in furtherance of the killer's win condition, the same way gen rushing is to the survivors. I don't really believe opposing sides trying to perform better and get the best of their opponent should ever be seen as toxic or wrong. Your opponent is not responsible for your enjoyment of the game. That's your job. If you don't like your opponent competing to win in a competitive game, then why are you playing a competitive game in the first place? And in a survivor-sided game, tunneling isn't as overpowered as some people think, but that's another topic for another video where I can go more in depth and how to counter tunneling. But those were my thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know.